Tyler was 19 when this happened, and he still remembers that Halloween night like it just happened yesterday. It was October 31st, 2019, and he and his two friends, Mike and Jordan, were leaving a small Halloween party at a friend's house. They didn't drink or party too hard. They just played games, ate chips, and watched scary movies until midnight. When it got late, they decided it was time to head home. It was a cold, clear night, with the moon shining so bright that it almost felt like it was daytime, but there was still something heavy about the air that night, something that made Tyler feel like something was waiting for them in the darkness. They lived in a small town in Canada, so the roads were quiet and not many cars were out that late, especially on Halloween night when most people were already home or asleep. Tyler was driving his old Honda Civic, and Mike was in the passenger seat while Jordan sat in the back. They were talking about the scary movie they just watched and making jokes about how none of them would be able to sleep that night. They laughed and played music low so they wouldn't get too sleepy on the drive home. The party wasn't far, but they didn't want to take the main highway because there were police checks sometimes, and Tyler didn't want to deal with that, even though they weren't drunk. So Mike suggested they take a back road, which would cut across the town faster and avoid the highway lights. Tyler agreed, thinking it would be easier and maybe fun since it was Halloween, and they could scare each other with ghost stories while driving through the dark. They turned onto the back road, and immediately everything changed. The road was much darker than they expected. Trees lined both sides of the road, tall and thin, reaching up like long, dark fingers, almost touching each other over the road, blocking out the moonlight. The only light came from the car's headlights, which cut through the darkness like a thin blade, but it wasn't enough to show what was beyond the edge of the road. The road itself was cracked in places, with potholes and bumps that made the car shake every few minutes. The silence outside the car was heavy, and even though they were talking and laughing in the car, Tyler felt a knot in his stomach that he couldn't explain. It was the feeling you get when you are being watched, even when you know you are alone. As they drove deeper into the road, there were no houses, no lights, and no signs of other cars. It felt like they were driving into the middle of nowhere, and the only sounds were the engine of the car and the crunch of leaves and small branches under the tires. At one point, Mike tried to joke around saying, "Bro, imagine if we saw someone just standing in the road right now." His voice was playful, but it cracked a little at the end, and they all laughed. But not fully, because deep down, they all felt that fear. It was the kind of fear that you don't talk about because it sounds silly, but it's there, sitting on your chest. The darkness on that road felt heavier than any darkness they had felt before, and every shadow looked like it could move if they stared at it too long. Tyler kept his hands tight on the wheel, trying to focus on the road, but his eyes kept flicking to the sides, thinking he would see something standing there between the trees. Jordan tried to keep the mood light by playing a song on his phone, but it only made the silence outside feel louder, as if something was waiting in that silence, just outside the reach of the headlights. The air in the car felt cold, and Tyler noticed that his hands were sweating even though he wasn't warm. Every few minutes, they would see a deer crossing sign or a small old fence that was falling apart. But otherwise, the road felt endless, like they were driving in circles. They had been driving for about 10 minutes on that dark back road, and Tyler was starting to regret taking that route. It was supposed to be faster, but the road was so rough and the darkness so deep that it made him drive slower, and it felt like they were getting nowhere. At that moment, Tyler's phone buzzed, and he saw a message from his mom asking if he was coming home soon. He texted back quickly at a stop sign, saying he was on his way, not mentioning how uneasy he felt or how dark the road was. He didn't want to sound childish, but in the back of his mind, he wished he had just taken the highway dot as they kept driving. The tension in the car grew, even though no one was saying anything about it. It was the kind of silence that wasn't comfortable, the kind that makes you want to clear your throat just to break it. Tyler's eyes were starting to hurt from staring into the darkness, and he kept imagining shapes moving in the shadows, shapes that disappeared the second he focused on them. Every small sound from the car, like the rattle of a loose water bottle or the creak of the seat, made them all flinch just a little. It was a slow, creeping fear that was building in them, and none of them knew that the real fear was about to appear in front of them in the road dot just when they thought the road couldn't get any darker or quieter. Something appeared in the headlights. At first, it looked like a small bag or maybe an animal crossing the road, but as they got closer, they realized it wasn't an animal or a bag. It was a person, standing right in the middle of the road, not moving, and waiting for them to come closer. Tyler felt his stomach drop, and the car started to slow down on its own as he eased his foot off the gas, unable to look away from what was standing in front of them. The laughter and music stopped, and the car was filled with the sound of breathing, fast and shaky, as they all stared at the figure in the road, not knowing that their Halloween night was about to turn into a memory that would haunt them forever. The car crept forward slowly, the headlights now fully lighting up the figure in the road. Tyler's hands tightened on the steering wheel, his foot hovering over the brake. Mike leaned forward in his seat, squinting. Jordan, from the back seat, said quietly, "Is that a person?" The figure wasn't moving. It was a woman, standing completely still in the middle of the road. She looked like she was in her 20s or 30s, but it was hard to tell. She wore a long dark dress that looked old and tattered, and her hair was black and messy, hanging over most of her face like a curtain. She didn't have a coat, no bag, no flashlight, just her and the night. The three boys stared in silence, unsure of what to do. Something about her felt wrong. She didn't look injured, but she wasn't waving or calling for help either. She just stood there like she was waiting. The only movement came when a breeze moved her hair slightly, but she herself didn't flinch, didn't step back, didn't do anything at all. Tyler rolled the car forward a little more, then stopped just a few feet away from her. "Should I ask if she needs help?" he said, barely louder than a whisper. Mike hesitated and then said, "Nah, man, something's off." "She's just standing there," Jordan added. "She's freaking me out. Let's go around." But Tyler couldn't look away. Something deep in his mind was telling him to help, that she might be in trouble. Another part of him, stronger, colder, was screaming that this was not normal, that this woman wasn't someone they were supposed to find. As they sat there frozen, the woman slowly lifted her head. Her skin looked pale in the headlights, almost gray, and her eyes were shadowed, like she hadn't slept in weeks. Her mouth was slightly open, not in a smile, not in a frown, just open, like she was in shock or confused. It wasn't the look of someone scared or desperate. It was blank, like she wasn't really there. Her hand rose up, slowly, like she was trying to reach out to them. She didn't speak. She didn't wave. She just raised her hand as if expecting them to take it. Tyler's fingers moved toward the window button, thinking maybe he should talk to her, see if she was lost or hurt. But as soon as the window moved down just a few inches, Jordan shouted from the back, "Tyler, don't! Roll it back up." There was real fear in his voice. Tyler froze, his fingers still on the button, then slowly rolled it back up without saying a word. The woman took a step forward. That was when Mike shouted, "No! Go! Go!" And Tyler didn't wait this time. He hit the gas and swerved around her. The tires squealed slightly as he tried not to hit the ditch or the trees on the side of the narrow road. They passed her, and for a brief second, Tyler glanced in the rearview mirror to see if she was still there. But she wasn't. The road behind them was empty. Not a trace of the woman, not even the shadow of her dress. Tyler said nothing, but the hair on the back of his neck stood up. "Where'd she go?" he asked out loud. No one answered. Mike was gripping the armrest tightly, and Jordan had gone quiet. For a few minutes, none of them said anything. The road was still dark and empty, and every turn made them feel like she would be there again. They kept checking the mirrors, half expecting her to show up in the back seat or standing in the road again. Finally, Mike broke the silence and tried to laugh, but it was weak and forced. "Probably just some weird Halloween prank," he said, though he didn't sound like he believed it himself. Jordan said, "Yeah, maybe. But who just stands in the middle of the road like that? No phone, no flashlight, nothing?" Tyler shook his head. "I don't know, man. Something felt wrong." The air in the car was tense. It was like all the fun they had earlier was gone now. They weren't laughing anymore. Every sound outside the car, the rustling trees, the occasional animal moving through the woods felt louder, more threatening. Tyler drove faster now, wanting to get off that road. But after about 5 more minutes, something happened that made their blood run cold. They reached an old wooden bridge. It creaked under the weight of the car as they drove over it slowly. Tyler had been on this road before once or twice, and he remembered the bridge, but what he didn't remember was what he saw at the edge of it. Just as they were about to cross, something caught in the headlights again. On the side of the road, at the edge of the bridge, was the same woman, standing perfectly still. Same dress, same hair, same pale face. Her hand was still raised like before, reaching out. Tyler slammed on the brakes for just a second, frozen in shock. Mike gasped, "No way. That's not possible." "She was behind us." Jordan said nothing. His mouth was open, but no words came out. "She didn't run. We would have seen her." "We didn't pass her," Tyler said. But there she was, again, and this time her head was tilted slightly to the side, like she was listening to them. They didn't wait. Tyler floored the gas, drove across the bridge, and didn't look back. Whatever they saw, whoever she was, they wanted nothing more than to get away. As they sped down the road, no one said a word, but all of them had the same thought. Something was wrong with that road, and something was even more wrong with that woman. Tyler's hands were shaking on the steering wheel as he drove faster down the dark road, leaving the old bridge and the woman behind them. Mike and Jordan were silent, their eyes wide, breathing heavy, trying to understand what they had just seen. None of them could believe it. The woman had somehow appeared at the bridge, even though there was no way she could have gotten there before them. They hadn't passed her, and she hadn't run. It was like she had just appeared out of nowhere, standing there with her hand raised, waiting for them. The road felt darker now, and the air in the car was heavy, like it was pressing down on their chests. Tyler tried to focus on driving, but every few seconds, he would glance in the rearview mirror, afraid he would see her face staring back at him from the back seat or standing in the road again. The trees on both sides of the road looked like tall shadows swaying slightly in the wind, making strange shapes in the dark. Every branch that moved made them jump, thinking it was her stepping out onto the road again. The road felt like it was never-ending, twisting and turning with no lights, no signs, and no other cars. The only sound in the car was the engine and the tires on the rough road, but to Tyler, it sounded like whispers coming from the darkness outside. Voices too soft to understand, but loud enough to make him feel like someone was speaking to him. Mike tried to break the silence, saying, "We're almost at the main road, right?" But his voice was weak, and it didn't sound like a question. It sounded like he was begging for it to be true. Tyler nodded, not sure if it was true, but he needed to believe it. Jordan hadn't spoken since they saw her on the bridge, and he was staring out the window, his eyes wide, looking into the trees, like he was afraid she would be there, walking alongside the car, keeping up with them in the dark. Tyler's phone buzzed again, and it made all of them jump. It was another message from his mom asking if he was okay. He didn't answer. He didn't want to look at his phone and take his eyes off the road, not now. His heart was pounding, and he felt cold even though the heater was on. It was the kind of cold that came from fear, the kind that made your skin feel tight and your stomach feel heavy. As they drove, they passed an old, broken fence, and the headlights caught something moving behind it. Tyler turned his head for just a second and saw a shadow move quickly between the trees. He couldn't tell if it was an animal or a person, but it was moving fast, faster than a person should be able to move. He told himself it was probably a deer, but deep down he didn't believe it. Mike saw it too and said, "Did you see that?" Tyler nodded, pressing the gas a little harder. They just wanted to get off that road, to get back to lights and houses and people. But the road felt like it was stretching, like it was pulling them deeper into the dark, refusing to let them go. Every time they turned a corner, Tyler expected to see the woman standing in the middle of the road again, her hand raised, her face hidden by her hair. Every shadow on the road looked like it could be her, and Tyler's hands were hurting from gripping the steering wheel so tightly. They finally saw a small sign that said the main road was ahead, and all of them let out a breath they didn't know they were holding. But just as they were about to reach the end of the back road, something happened that made their fear turn into something worse, something that would stay with them long after that night. As they came around the last bend, the headlights caught something on the side of the road again. Tyler's eyes went wide, and he hit the brakes, the car slowing down as they all stared. It was the woman. She was standing on the side of the road, just before the stop sign that led to the main road. She was standing there, facing them, her hand still raised, her hair moving slightly in the wind, but her body completely still. Tyler's breath caught in his throat, and for a moment, the car was completely silent except for the low rumble of the engine. No one spoke, no one moved. They just stared at her, frozen in fear. Tyler's mind was racing, trying to understand how she had gotten there, how she kept appearing in front of them, always waiting. Her face was still pale, but this time he could see her eyes under her hair. They were dark, almost black, and they looked empty, like there was nothing behind them. It was like looking into a deep hole, and for a moment, Tyler felt like he was falling into those eyes, unable to look away. Then, without thinking, Tyler slammed his foot on the gas, swerving. Around her, not caring if he hit a pothole or scraped the side of the road. The car sped past her, and for a brief second, as they passed, Tyler thought he saw her mouth move, like she was saying something, but he couldn't hear it over the sound of the engine and the pounding of his heart. They didn't look back. They didn't want to see if she was still there or if she was watching them leave. They turned onto the main road, and for the first time in what felt like hours, they saw street lights and houses in the distance. But the fear didn't leave them. It stayed in the car, heavy and cold, as they drove home in silence, each of them, knowing that whatever they saw on that dark road wasn't just a person needing help. It was something else, something that wasn't supposed to be there, and it had found them on Halloween night. Tyler, Mike, and Jordan finally made it back to town, the bright lights of the street lamps and the glow of houses making them feel safer for the first time that night. The silence in the car was heavy, and none of them wanted to talk about what they saw on the road. It was like saying it out loud would make it real, and they all wanted to believe it was just their minds playing tricks on them. Tyler dropped Mike off first, watching as he quickly walked to his house, looking over his shoulder before going inside. Then he drove Jordan home, and Jordan hesitated before getting out of the car, finally saying, "Bro, don't go back that way. Ever." Tyler nodded, but neither of them wanted to say the word woman or talk about her eyes or the way she moved without sound. When Tyler finally got home, his mom was waiting by the window, asking if he was okay, and he just said, "Yeah, just tired." He didn't tell her that he felt like the shadows outside were moving, or that every time he closed his eyes, he saw that woman standing in the road, her hand raised, waiting. That night, Tyler tried to sleep, but every creak of the house made him jump, and he kept checking the window, half expecting to see her face staring in at him from the darkness. He told himself it was just fear, that it would pass in the morning. But even as he lay in bed, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed him home. The next morning, everything seemed normal. The sun was shining, kids were playing outside in the leaves, and the fear from the night before felt like a bad dream. Tyler texted Mike and Jordan, asking if they were okay, and they both said they were fine, but they didn't talk about the woman or what they saw. They decided to just forget it, to move on. But later that day, Tyler's mom asked him to drive to the store to pick up milk. He didn't want to go, but he didn't want to worry her, so he got in his car and started driving. He took the main road, avoiding the back road, but as he stopped at a red light, he glanced in his side mirror and saw something that made his blood run cold. Across the street, near the edge of the woods, was the woman. She was standing there, in broad daylight, wearing the same dark, tattered dress. Her hair still covering most of her face, and her pale hand was raised, just like on the road. Tyler's breath caught, and he blinked, thinking it was his mind playing tricks on him. But when he opened his eyes, she was still there, standing perfectly still, facing him. The light turned green, and Tyler drove off quickly, his hand shaking on the wheel. When he looked back, she was gone, like she was never there. Tyler didn't tell Mike or Jordan about seeing her again. He didn't want to scare them, and he didn't want to believe it himself. But over the next few days, Tyler started seeing her more. Sometimes it was in reflections, like in the glass of a store window or in his car mirror, just for a second before she vanished. Other times he would see her standing far away, near the woods or across the street, always watching, always with her hand raised. He started to lose sleep, afraid to close his eyes, because every time he did, he saw her face pale and empty, her dark eyes staring at him, pulling him in. One night, about a week later, Tyler was home alone, sitting in his room with the lights off, trying to calm down after seeing her again outside near the mailbox. He heard a soft tapping on his window, and his body froze. He didn't want to look, but something made him turn his head. There, standing outside his window, was the woman. Her hand was pressed against the glass, and for the first time he could see her face clearly. Her eyes were black and empty, and her mouth was moving, but no sound was coming out. It was like she was trying to say something, but her voice was lost. Tyler jumped back, falling off his chair, and when he scrambled to his feet and looked again, she was gone. The next morning, he found a handprint on the outside of his window, faint but clear, like someone had pressed their hand against the glass during the night. Tyler tried to wash it off, but it wouldn't fade completely, no matter how hard he scrubbed. He knew then that whatever he and his friends had seen on that Halloween night had attached itself to him, and it wasn't going to leave. The worst part was that Mike and Jordan started seeing her too. Mike texted Tyler late one night saying, "Bro, I saw her outside my house. She was standing in the road, looking at my window." Jordan sent a voice message whispering, "She was at the bus stop today. I couldn't move. She just stood there." None of them knew what to do. They stopped hanging out, too scared to talk about it, too scared to see her again. Tyler started to feel like he was losing his mind, seeing her in crowds, in reflections, in the corner of his eyes. Every Halloween. After that, Tyler stayed inside, locking all the doors and windows, afraid that she would come back closer than before. And every year, on Halloween night, he would hear soft tapping on the window. And he knew she was there, waiting, her hand raised, her eyes empty, still trying to finish whatever she started on that dark back road on the night they should have. Just stayed on the highway, never taking that shortcut that led them to her.